how the old saying goes, slow and steady wins the race. You might think that that is why this turtle image has become so popular. You see it on almost every school crossing, and it's across the streets. Well, it's got a historic significance connected with the Fabian socialism. You can actually look up this, and it's tied in with something very disturbing as their main image, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Their flag looks quite demonic. Another thing to look out for, a tree of eugenics. This is the type of thing to question.
Here in New York in the UN headquarters. These are special meetings. They give us the opportunity to exchange ideas on major issues and relate our work with the work that goes on in the United Nations General Assembly. Many of the views we expressed in the meeting of our Presidium last year here in New York and the year before were unfortunately proven right. We were right to say that the global financial crisis needed strong will and real reform, establishment of supervision and control mechanisms, which unluckily are progressing very slowly. We have said that concrete initiatives are needed to make a difference, such as the global financial transaction tax or the carbon tax, green bonds. These we discussed. Some of these issues were brought up in the last G20 summit, but they were given lip service and not the real support that is needed to become reality. So it's imperative to move faster, and we need the will for global and democratic governance. This has been our motto for many years. We have been proven right, if you like. Our family has, from the very beginning of the crisis, put on the table concrete proposals how we are going to face multiple issues such as the financial crisis, the climate change crisis, food crisis, the issues of poverty, the issues of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. We are in the forefront, and our ideas, I think, are more relevant than ever. And Europe has also given us a vote of confidence, a major package of support to continue these changes, to have the time to make Greece viable. And I would also like to express my appreciation to the citizens, the parliaments, the governments of Europe for their solidarity, and obviously for the socialist forces in Europe that have been very strongly in alliance and solidarity with what we're doing. But the Greek crisis also has highlighted a wider crisis in Europe and in the world. Again, it's a crisis of politics. It's a crisis in democratic governance. It is a crisis that poses the question, do we have the will? And it is to humanize globalization in order to pool our sovereignty, and that's what we have done, but we need to continue to do this, to deal with new crises we have around the world. The financial crisis, of course, the energy crisis, the environmental crisis, the crisis of poverty, growth, good jobs, employment, competitiveness. The single currency, very important for us. However, with a single currency, we have no real single governance of our economies, or strong governance of our economies. And this hid many of the problems. It hid problems even in Greece. We were able to borrow cheaply, not make the necessary changes that we should have made, but also when the crisis struck, then we could not borrow at all, while others could. and the differences in the rates of borrowing, the interest rates of borrowing, do not allow us to be competitive. These are systemic problems we must deal with and find the will to do so. Fear-mongering, at least, that we will default, that Greece is going to fall apart. We are still surviving. But we need to see how our democratic institutions can stand up to these new challenges. Are we too frightened to create a financial transaction tax, which would put, yes, some of the burden on those who created the crisis in 2008, the banks and the financial system, and use that money, that potential, those resources for growth, for jobs, for changing our economies, for supporting this difficult transition of crisis? Are we too fearful for stimulating our economies and rekindling our economies? We cannot do so at the national level where we have difficult programs of austerity, but we can have this at the regional level, such as in Europe with the Eurobonds, with big projects that can create jobs, move us to green growth, or maybe even add to that a CO2 tax to help our environment. Are we too fearful to make these decisions, which will help us and to move both to growth and jobs, but also to a sustainable economy? These are democratic challenges. They're not economic, they're not financial, they're not technical issues. They are democratic challenges for a progressive movement. Yes, we can do things at the national level and local level, but we also must do things at the regional and global level. But we do, in fact, our tradition, our movement does have examples, and it is the Nordic welfare state. Yes, they have been able to show us the way, even though they are often threatened, that you can have social cohesion, you can have equality, you can have education, you can have participation, you can have democracy, and be of the most competitive in the world. So our major problem is a question of equality and inequality, and it's not simply in our societies or between our societies, it's also between our citizens and our nations, and a new global establishment which is able to amass great riches, great powers, capital, media, potential, but can go beyond our borders, our democratic institutions, with very little or no controls and no regulation. Tahrir Square, the Arab Spring, also a desire for democracy. There, of course, they are founding their democracies. They are building anew their democracies. In our societies where we have had democratic institutions for many years, we are looking to renew our democracies. And I think this is, despite the violence which no one of us can accept, the peaceful demonstrators, I believe, in Greece do want to see the renewal of democracy. And this is a democratic challenge, because there is a paradox, dear friends, in our societies and in our world. We have a younger generation that knows the problems. With their internet, they know the global problems, and they feel these are problems in their societies, in their lives, and lives around the world. But at the same time, because they are global problems, they are more difficult to deal with. The institutions are lacking. They also see that there is great potential, yet this potential is harnessed not by the peoples, but by special interests and concentrated in the hands of few. And this is also a huge frustration for the younger generation. No wonder they question our systems and our democracies, and no wonder we have the great task of renewing our democracies in a different way and seeing what democracy does mean today for our societies in a globalizing economy. But regarding the Arab countries, the Arab Spring, we are committed as Socialist International to stand by the fight, the struggles of the democratic forces of the Arab world. We will be supporting and are supporting this process. Today in the SI we will continue to operate on the principle of consensus building. We have the task of setting up a working group for further strengthening our movement, making the necessary changes for the new times we have ahead, and certainly we will do so taking into account the diverse national and transnational terms and challenges to strengthen our democratic institutions in our movement and in our societies, and deal with the global economy in complex times. And yes, we can. What we are going through is certainly the strength that we need to continue on a difficult path. And this, I think, is also the strength of our movement, the strength that we have in solidarity, the strength that we have as comrades, as friends, to fight together in difficult times and have the strength to continue against all odds. And we will survive, and we will win. Thank you very much.